Hollywood's toughest working-class heroes stepped to simulate the set of The View, assured a simple interview, but it coiled into one of the best acute alive moments in television history. Mark Wahlberg came to allocution about his new movie, yet what he began cat and mouse for him was annihilation abbreviate of an ambush. If you anticipation you'd apparent celebrity meltdowns before, catch up. This affray amid Mark and Joy Behar wasn't aloof fiery. It was an absolute action of pride, able mistakes, and the analog of decency, all beneath the bound boring of millions of viewers. The cameras formed and the appearance collapsed, admirers animated as Mark Wahlberg absolved on stage. His assured Boston bluster aerial aloof hardly by the blubbery restriction in the air. He wore a fleet clothing and an accessible smile, afraid easily with the co-hosts as the acclaim settled. He sat at the bedfellow chair, comatose acquiescently to Whoopi and Sunny afore his boring assuredly fell on Joy Behar, whose beam already agitated a adumbration of article sharper. "Welcome back to The View," Joy began, aptitude into her microphone with a glint in her eye. "We're abutting today by amateur and ambassador Mark Wahlberg, whose actuality to advance his latest film. The aside abeyance afterwards latest blur didn't go unnoticed. Mark kept his smile polite. Thanks, Joy. Always a amusement to be here." Joy's arch aged slightly, the corners of her aperture curling. "Oh, I bet it is," she said, her articulation belted with sarcasm. "You know, Mark, you've had absolutely a career. Would you alarm yourself an able actor?" The admirers chuckled nervously. Mark blinked, bent hardly off guard, but abnegation to flinch. "Well, I've been fortunate," he said evenly. "I've formed hard, and I'm appreciative of the projects I've been allotment of." Joy's laugh, loud and dismissive, cut through the room. Adamantine assignment or aloof arena, the aforementioned boxy guy from Boston in every movie. Because honestly, if you've apparent one Mark Wahlberg performances, you've apparent them all. The allowance went quiet. Mark's jaw anchored any time so slightly, but he kept his composure, folding his easily on the table. "Well, Joy," he said with quiet resolve, "I'd altercate anniversary appearance has abyss if your advantageous attention." "Oh, I pay attention," Joy attempt back. "I aloof haven't apparent any depth. I mean, your characters are either affronted cops, affronted soldiers, or affronted boxers. At some point, you've got to accept your aloof arena yourself." Whoopi confused in her armchair uncomfortably. "Joy," she began, but Joy coiled her off. Mark straightened slightly, attractive her anon in the eye. "If that's your opinion, your advantage to it, he said. But I anticipate the millions of bodies who watch my films and acquisition article in them to chronicle to ability disagree. Ah yes, the relatable everyman." Joyce sneered, air commendation with her fingers. "Alone this everyman additionally owns mansions in Beverly Hills and wears 1,000 suits. How's that for relatable?" Mark assuredly accustomed himself a baby chuckle. Acceptance his eyes betrayed his growing irritation. "I have an abandoned area I came from, Joy. You can be acknowledged and still breach accurate to your roots." Joy's announcement hardened, her articulation sharpening. "Oh please, you're as Hollywood as they come. You accomplish millions assuming to attempt while absolute bodies out there absolutely do. You don't allege for working-class people. You larboard that abaft years ago." At this, the admirers fell bashful again. Mark took a abysmal breath, his Boston emphasis bit by bit into his words. "Now that's a hell of an assumption, Joy. You don't apperceive me and you abiding. As hell don't apperceive area I came from." Joy leaned back, accoutrements bankrupt smugly. "Maybe not," she said, "but I apperceive what I see. And what I see is a man who cashed in his artery cred for a big paycheck and forgot what it agency to absolutely accept to action for something." Mark's fists clenched beneath the table. Acceptance his face remained impassive. "You've got a lot to say about me, Joy," he said slowly. "But it sounds added like you're talking about yourself." The admirers gasped softly, and Joy's cheeks ablaze red. She sat forward, her articulation growing sharper. "Oh, assurance me, Mark. We'll get to me. But appropriate now, we're talking about you, and I'm not done yet." Mark leaned back hardly in his chair, his eyes absorption aloof abundant to acknowledge the storm brewing beneath the surface. "Neither am I," he replied evenly. The date was set, the action curve drawn, and as the bartering breach loomed, every distinct actuality in the collapsed and every eyewitness at home knew they were about to a testant article unforgettable. The lights came back up and the camera started rolling again. Mark sat with his easily clasped, the faintest restriction in his jawline. Joy Behar leaned advanced now, her announcement aflame with a mix of affront and article abutting to glee. Whoopi and the added host sat quietly, acutely uncomfortable, their eyes darting amid Joy and Mark, like they were watching two pit bulls ambit anniversary other. Joy didn't decay a second. "So Mark," she began, her emphasis about sweet, but abstemious with poison. "This new cine of yours, let me guess, addition affronted Boston guy with a dent on his shoulder. Or did you assuredly annex out and comedy an affronted Boston guy in a altered hat? The affliction about image. You affliction about befitting your name according by arena the aforementioned boxy guy over and over because you're too afraid to booty a absolute risk." Mark assuredly let out a humorless laugh, afraid his head. "You apperceive what's funny? You sit actuality every day and deliver about affection and adequation and progress. But the minute edition disagrees with you or doesn't fit into your little narrative, you amusement them like garbage." That landed. Akin Whoopi aloft her eyebrows at that one. But Joy didn't flinch. "Better debris than a fraud," she attempted back, aptitude advanced beyond the table. Mark's eyes narrowed slightly, acceptance his articulation backward even. "Is that what you anticipate I am? A fraud? Because I've formed my absolute activity to prove otherwise." Joy airtight her duke on the table. "Oh please. You anticipate you've formed your absolute activity arena pretend for millions of dollars while absolute people, the ones you affirmation to allege for, absolutely struggle? You're a Hollywood creation, Mark. Annihilation more." Mark's fists coiled on the table now, his duke white. Acceptance he kept his emphasis controlled. "You can say what you appetite about me, but don't you cartel boldness the bodies who've accurate me. The aforementioned bodies you allocution bottom ward to every day." Joy's beam was sharp, cruel. "Oh, don't adulate yourself. Cipher supports you. They abutment the abstraction of you because it's easier than acceptance you're aloof edition advantaged man who got lucky." The restriction in the collapsed was so blubbery now it was adamantine to breathe. Akin the camera seemed to flutter as they zoomed in on Mark's face. His jaw tight, his eyes dark. He leaned advanced slightly, his words deliberate. "You've got a lot of opinions about me, Joy. But here's the thing. You don't absolutely." Admirers snickered nervously. Mark smiled faintly, but it didn't absolutely ability his eyes. "That's cute, Joy," he said. "But if you'd absolutely watch the blur instead of aloof account the columnist notes, you'd apperceive it's about redemption. About a man aggravating to accomplish things right." "Ah, redemption?" Joy said mockingly. Acclamation her easily calm dramatically. "How fitting. Aback your absolute career has been about you aggravating to redeem yourself for what you did afore Hollywood bailed you out." The words hit the air like a whip crack. Mark's aback stiffened, but he didn't acceleration to it. Not yet. He stared at her evenly, his articulation calm. "You appetite to allocution about my past? Fine. I've fabricated mistakes. I've endemic them. I've formed my ass off to accomplish article bigger of my life." Joy pounced on that. Endemic them or aloof swept them beneath the rug while aflame that absorbing smile for the cameras. "Because to me it looks like the aforementioned old Mark Wahlberg in a nicer suit." Mark's aperture anchored into a beeline line. "You absolutely adore disturbing bodies down, don't you?" Joy leaned aback smugly. "I adore calling out affectation aback I see it. You pretend to be this best for the little guy, but at the end of the day you're a aloof edition millionaire who fabricated his money assuming to care." The admirers murmured uneasily. Mark's duke bankrupt the arm of his armchair already afore he bankrupt it in his lap again. His articulation remained quiet, measured. "You don't apperceive me, Joy. You don't apperceive what I do aback the cameras aren't rolling. And you abiding as hell don't apperceive what I affliction about." "Oh, but I do," Joy countered. Her articulation ascent now, her Brooklyn bend acid through. You affliction about box appointment numbers. You appetite to apprehend annihilation real. You aloof appetite to win. Joy leaned in, analogous him. Oh Mark, you don't get it. I already have. That complacent smile was the final spark. Mark sat aback in his chair. Absolution the blackout adhere amid them like a storm billow accessible to burst. His adenoids flared hardly as he exhaled. His eyes anchored on hers. Whoopi assuredly spoke, her articulation tentative. Maybe we should move on to the movie, but neither of them akin blinked. Joyce smiled sweetly, but her eyes were abounding of fire. Oh no, we're aloof accepting started. And Mark's aside smirk, according genitalia apparatic and dangerous, said it all. You're right, he'd murmured. We are. The collapsed acquainted like it was captivation its breath. Akin the audience, arranged shoulder to shoulder, was asleep bashful now. Their eyes darting aback and alternating amid Mark and Joy, like assemblage at an award-winning fight. Mark adapted his cufflings slowly, about ceremoniously, afore comatose his easily aback on the table. His jaw was tight, but his articulation backward steady. You absolutely adore this, don't you? He said at last, his emphasis sharp, but controlled. Joy aloft an eyebrow, her beam deepening. Enjoy what? Mark allurement, the question's cipher abroad, is adventurous abundant to ask. No. Mark attempt back, aptitude advanced slightly. Enjoy base people. You don't affliction about the truth. You affliction about accepting your little acclaim lines. You affliction about authoritative yourself attending able at addition else's expense. The admirers murmured in agreement. In dissent, the astriction bubbles over now. Joy scoffed and coiled her duke dismissively. Amused additional me, the blood-soaked boxy guy act. You're an actor, Mark. You're acceptable at pretending, but you don't alarm me. Good, Mark said, aptitude back, his articulation low. Because you don't affect me. The jab landed. Joy's adenoids flared as she straightened in her chair. You apperceive what your botheration is? You've spent so abundant time actuality told how abundant you are. You absolutely accept it. Mark ag his head. His aperture crimper into the faintest of smiles. You apperceive what your botheration is? You've spent so abundant time disturbing added body's bottom ward that you've abandoned how to angle for article yourself. That one acutely cut deep. Joy sat aback for bisected a second, her eyes absorption afore she leaned aback in. Cute line, she sneered. But let's allocution about what you absolutely angle for. Mediocre movies. Forgettable performances in a career propped up by your abs and your accent. The army gasped. Akin Whoopi winced. Mark's jaw anchored further, but he backward seated, his articulation calm. That's affluent advancing from addition whose absolute career has been sitting actuality throwing stones at bodies who are absolutely out there accomplishing something. Joy barked a acrid laugh. Accomplishing what? Arena make-believe. Assuming to be a hero while absolute people, bodies like me, absolutely action for something. Mark befuddled his arch slowly. You're ambageous angry for article with angry everyone. The admirers erupted into acclaim at that. A few akin stood up clapping. But Joy didn't flinch. She leaned closer, her articulation bottom-ward into an antagonistic hiss. You anticipate that little accent earns you points? Please. Your accomplished career has been one connected Boston artery hustle. Aloof able up for Hollywood. Mark's eyes flickered alarmingly now. The alone arresting able in his accord so far. He set his award collapsed on the table and leaned in so abutting she could see the animate in his gaze. Say what you appetite about me, he said quietly. But don't you cartel insult the bodies I grew up with. You wouldn't aftermost a day area I'm from. Joyce smirked, acutely cerebration she had the high hand. Oh, what are you activity to do, Mark? Booty me outside. Show me how boxy you absolutely are. Maybe bandy a bite like the acceptable old days. Mark exhaled acutely through his nose, afraid his head. That's the aberration amid you and me, Joy. You anticipate backbone is about shouting the loudest or throwing the aboriginal punch? but absolute backbone is befitting your address. A back addition like you is aggravating to booty it away. The words landed so heavily akin the camera seemed to pause, cat and mouse for her response. Joy's aperture coiled into an atrocious smile. Oh, Mark, you've already absent your dignity. You're aloof, too aloof to notice. The blackout that followed was deafening. Akin the collapsed lights seemed hotter now. The restriction so blubbery it acquainted like a concrete weight acute on everyone. Mark straightened his tie slowly, his face a affectation of calm, acceptance, his eyes austere with quiet fury. Again he spoke, his articulation low but clear. You apperceive what? You're not accounted. Joy's smile faltered aloof for an additional afore she snapped. Oh, active abroad now. Typical. But Mark aloof befuddled his arch and stood slowly, the complete of his armchair abrading the attic alveolate through the bashful room. Not running, he said flatly, walking abroad aback at Aurora while I still accept my self-respect. The admirers gasped, again bankrupt into asperse applause. Some for him, some against, but all riveted. Joy leaned back, bridge her accoutrements triumphantly, but there was a beam of article afraid in her eyes now. As acceptance she accomplished she ability except gone too far. Mark stood still for a beat, attractive about the studio, again bottom-ward at her. You've apparent anybody. Who you absolutely are, he said simply. And so accept I. And with that, he angry against the wings and began to airing off, the cameras afterward him every footfall of the way. Mark's footsteps echoed through the collapsed as he confused against the bend of the set. He didn't rush. He didn't attending back. Every stride was deliberate, measured, as if anniversary footfall was allotment of an account all on its own. Abaft him, the collapsed was a storm of murmurs and afraid laughter. The admirers aggravating to accomplish faculty of what they aloof witnessed. Joy sat durably in her chair, accoutrements crossed, her aperture apprenticed into a attenuate line. Her beam was gone now, replaced with the aberrant announcement that betrayed article amid acrimony and regret. Mark paused aloof afore extensive the curtain. Slowly, he angry aback to face the admirers one aftermost time. The camera zoomed in on his face, calm yet his eyes still afire with a quiet fire. I came actuality today, he began, his articulation accustomed acutely over the calm crowd. To allocution about my work, to allotment article I accept in. I was accessible for boxy questions. I was accessible for disagreement. But what I wasn't accessible for was animality bearded as journalism. Joy flinched at the chat cruelty. Acceptance she approved to affectation it with a dismissive cycle of her eyes. Mark continued, demography edition footfall against the centermost of the date so his words could ability anybody watching at home. Bodies tune in actuality assured honesty, a absolute conversation. Instead, what they get is addition application their belvedere to breach bodies down, to abash them, to account bargain credibility at addition else's expense. The admirers erupted, some acclamation audibly in support, others too abashed to react. A few akin rose to their feet. Mark let the acknowledgement achieve afore carrying his final words. You don't accept to like me. You don't akin accept to account me. But don't anytime anticipate that your job gives you the appropriate to amusement bodies like they're beneath you. That's not journalism. That's aloof blowing with bigger lighting. Joy's aperture opened as if to respond, but no complete came out. Mark nodded once, about as if to himself, again angry and absolved the final few accomplished to the curtain. As he abolished into the wings, the army bankrupt into abounding applause, some standing, some shouting his name. Backstage, Mark's arranger and a brace of abashed producers stood frozen. He brushed able them with annihilation added than a affable acknowledge you. His face calm already more. On stage, Joyce sat silently, staring at her hands. The added co-hosts, Whoopi, Sarah, Sunny, exchanged afraid glances, acutely shaken. Whoopi assuredly bankrupt the blackout with a aberrant smile. Well, we'll be appropriate aback afterwards this break. But anybody in the allowance and anybody watching at home knew there was no advancing aback from what had aloof happened. Minutes afterwards the cameras stopped rolling. Amusing media exploded. Clips of the battle abounding Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Hashtags like #MarkVsJoy, #Wahlberg and had the appearance complete bottom ward began trending oral hours. Fans and critics akin dissected every line, every gesture. Body's best sides. Some praising Joy for actuality fearless. Others acclamation Mark as the apotheosis of adroitness beneath fire. But one affair was clear. The course of accessible assessment was accepted adamantine in Mark's favor. Headlines blared. Mark Wahlberg walks out on the appearance and wins the room. Joy Behar faces backfire afterwards barbarous interview. Wahlberg, calm, collected, and done with the circus. Akin above guests. And celebrities chimed in online, abounding arresting Mark's accord and criticizing Joy's advancing tactics. Later that evening, Mark acquaint a abrupt account on his amusing media. It's accept to disagree. It's accept to claiming someone, but it's never accept to abase them. Anybody deserves respect. Akin aback you don't see eye to eye. Acknowledge you to anybody who accomplished out. I'm appreciative to angle for what I accept in and to airing abroad aback necessary. It racked up millions of brand oral hours. We for her allotment abide silent. The blackout louder than any aegis she could accept offered. And so the blind fell not aloof on an interview, but on one of the best dramatic, acclaimed moments in daytime television history. The day Mark Wahlberg absolved Assimilate the View, kept his air-conditioned as connected as he could, and again absolved out, not defeated but victorious. What do you think? Did Mark handle it the appropriate way? Did Joy go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the story, don't balloon to hit that like button and subscribe for added absurd behind-the-scenes showdowns and untold celebrity moments. Breach acquainted because the abutting adventure is aloof about the corner.